This is the 2009 Bugatti Veyron 16.4. Automatic spoilers, wings and diffusers keep the Veyron pinned to the ground at high speed. Slow down in a hurry, and the rear wing acts as an air brake, like the parachute on a top-fuel dragster.
Above 155 miles an hour, they stop trying to classify hurricanes. 155 miles an hour is a Category 5, the kind that killed 12,000 burly Texans in 1900. There is no Category 6, because if there was, there'd be nobody left to classify it once it had passed. The Bugatti Veyron will pass through the air at 252 miles an hour, so you have some idea of the forces of nature at work here, and the reasons why it needs to haul that vast aeroplane wing into the airstream to keep it stable. It's also why it needs 16 cylinders, 8 litres, 4 turbochargers, 10 radiators, and 1,000 horsepower. Everything about this car is Category 6. Except, that is, the skill level required to drive it. Your mother could. A flappy paddle gearbox developed by people who develop Formula One gearboxes, and a four-wheel drive system developed with some considerable amount of head-scratching by rocket scientists means you just get in and drive. And you won't drive anything faster. Anything. Like Concorde and the Saturn V, the Veyron is the furthest its particular engineering avenue will be explored. The men who engineered it are probably working now on hydrogen propulsion. There is no longer a place in the world for a car that will, with a twist of the special extra key required to dial in that hurricane-beating top speed, consume a set of 10,000-pound tyres in just 300 miles. And that makes me sad.
This is the 2008 Lamborghini Reventon.
If you think the Lamborghini Murcielago isn't rare or special enough, this is the car for you. It's called the Reventon. And if you think it looks like an F-22 Raptor stealth fighter, you'd be right. That was the idea. Except on the Raptor, all the strange surfaces and matte black paint are meant to make it look more discreet. But this car is a Lamborghini, and Lamborghini doesn't know the meaning of discreet. Certainly there's nothing even remotely discreet about the monstrous 6.5-litre, 640 horsepower V12. Firing that up is like strapping a unicorn to the roof and driving around shouting, "Look at me!" through a loud hailer. Mind you, frankly, you've more chance of seeing a unicorn than seeing a Reventon, because Lamborghini made just 20 of them. Although if you do see one, you'll almost certainly remember it.
The Reventon's all-business interior is alight with cockpit-inspired instrumentation, reinforcing its fighter jet influence. The fully digital display completely rethinks traditional dials and gauges. This is the 1993 McLaren F1.
Before the Bugatti Veyron, there was this, the 241-mile-an-hour McLaren F1. Despite its similar top speed, the McLaren F1 is the very opposite of the Veyron. No turbochargers, no four-wheel drive, no traction control, no ABS, and no flappy paddle electronically controlled gearbox. In spirit, the McLaren is closer to a Caterham than a Bugatti. A Caterham with a gold-plated engine compartment. It was built without compromise, and nothing was to get in the way of the driving experience. That's why the driver sits in the middle, so they feel completely in control. McLaren was so determined to use this layout, they even had the law changed to make it possible. Then there's the 627 brake horsepower 6.1-litre V12 engine, built specially for this car by a crack team of BMW Motorsport engineers, and the bespoke gearbox and a body made of carbon fibre. We take that for granted in supercars now, but back in the early 90s, it was so extraordinary they might as well have made it from lumps of Jupiter. Personally, I've never cared that much for the F1. It was too twitchy. But without it, Bugatti wouldn't have had something to aim for, and we wouldn't have had the incredible Veyron. In that respect, we owe McLaren our thanks.
The F1's driver-oriented central seating arrangement is unprecedented for production cars, placing the driver right in the center of the car, ideal for control, feedback, and visibility on the racetrack.
A normal BMW 5 Series can be as interesting as travelling to Switzerland to buy some socks. But this isn't a normal 5 Series. This is the brand new BMW M5. Like previous versions of the M5, you wouldn't know it's anything out of the ordinary, unless you're an industrial-strength Class 1 ocean-going car bore. There are slightly swollen arches, fractionally bigger air intakes, and a set of subtle vents in the wings. But overall, it looks like the 520 that your dentist drives. And that's always been the genius of M5s, right back to the original of 1985. They may look quiet and unassuming, but they go like a stabbed badger. And this new one should be no exception. Gone is the rather drony V10 from the old M5, and in its place is a 4.4-litre twin-turbocharged V8, making over 550 horsepower. The pointlessly complicated and stupidly annoying gearbox of the old car has gone too, to be replaced by a 7-speed double-clutch flappy paddle system that should make changes as silky as Pierce Brosnan's underpants. So, it's as discreet as a Victorian butler, yet it's powerful enough to pop a kidney. It is, in short, another classic BMW M5. If the DeLorean hadn't existed, Tom Clancy would have had to invent it. This wasn't really a car. It was part of a bigger storyline that involved the British government, the feds, and a silver-haired anti-hero with some extremely odd ideas. The DeLorean itself was perhaps his oddest idea of all. An unpainted stainless steel sports car with gull-wing doors and, thanks to a wheezing 130 horsepower Renault engine hanging off the back, almost no performance whatsoever. The DeLorean quickly developed a terrible reputation, and that only got worse when famous American owners got locked inside by the failing electrics. It was a disaster, and production ended before Steven Spielberg made it a time-travelling film star. If you want one now, there's a man in America who can build you a new DeLorean from old parts. But he won't be the real deal until he gets on the FBI Most Wanted list.
This is the 1931 Bentley 8-litre.
The 1930 Bentley 8-litre could have become one of the world's greatest cars, like the gargantuan Bugatti Royale. But it was launched in London in 1930 with a price of £1,850. Back then, that was a lot. Especially since at almost exactly the same time, the Great Depression arrived in Europe. As a result, only 100 8-litres were ever made, and the car's failure brought Bentley to its knees. Within a year, it was sold to Rolls-Royce. Of those 100, only 78 are left, and every one is unique. This was a time when companies like Bentley sold you the bottom half of a car, the chassis, engine and wheels, and then left you to find a coach builder for the body and the seats and the roof. So this car shares its huge 220 horsepower, 6-cylinder engine and 21-inch wheels with all the other 8-litres, but the rest, that was always a one-off. On this one, for example, the roof opens down the middle, so when it rains, those on the left could opt to get wet, while those on the right could stay dry. Strangely, it was an idea that didn't catch on, just like the rest of the Bentley 8-litres. The Pagani Zonda, a car which proves that in Italy you can wake up one morning, drink one too many espressos, tell the world you're going to make a car as fast and as good as a Ferrari, and then actually go ahead and do it. This particular version, one of a baffling array of Zondas over the years, is the Cinque, a road-going version of the feral, track-only Zonda R. It's always puzzled us at Top Gear how Pagani makes its cars so good. Yes, they put in the effort by inventing a new cocktail of carbon fibre and titanium called carbotanium. And they managed to persuade Merck's power-crazed AMG division to build them special, V12 engines. But that's not enough on its own. What Pagani really understand is that a supercar should be loud and dramatic and fast enough to make your eyeballs turn to putty. They also make cars that are incredibly easy to drive. Many men in sheds try to make supercars and they get it wrong. But Pagani, as we see here, consistently gets it right. Very, very right.
The M12 Force Application Vehicle, better known as the Warthog, is a highly mobile and adaptable platform serving the UNSC. Famed for its toughness and sturdy design, stories about hogs surviving numerous tours of active combat duty abound. But none is more well known than the tale of the Daedalus. Near the beginning of the Covenant War, the UNSC frigate Daedalus went down in atmosphere over the planet Galgaliel, smashing into the irradiated world's high-gravity surface. The ship's molten wreckage was scattered for hundreds of miles, an unsurvivable event. And yet, 4 Warthogs had, in fact, survived the impact. Marines from the motor pool had buckled themselves into the Hog's seats as the frigate plummeted to the surface. Strapped to the ship's deck, incredibly, the vehicles remained intact. Due to the security restrictions of the Cole Protocol, the Marines would wait months for aid. To survive, they used the Hogs to desalinate water and search for food. And they even programmed their radios to broadcast the distress signal that eventually led to their rescue. Interior features vary depending on how the vehicle is purposed by AMG's factories, but standard controls include manual shifters and a steering-linked e-brake. A driver skilled in the use of this cutting brake can turn the Hog on a dime.